Israel and Hamas are now in an all-out war against each other, and it's already become the deadliest conflict in half a century. As the entire world watches this bloody conflict unfold, thousands of civilians on both sides have already been killed, and shockingly, it's expected to escalate even more. The conflict between Israel and Palestine has been ongoing for over 70 years, with Hamas calling the latest attack retribution for the worsening and decades of frankly appalling conditions for Palestinians living under Israeli military occupation since 1967. As the war intensifies, the US and its NATO allies are firmly on Israel's side, as the US has already sent warships, fighter jets, and munitions to the region. The world is on edge, as many have even suggested that this is the beginning of World War III. However, amid this escalating chaos, something absolutely insane has surfaced: growing accusations that this war is somehow all of China's fault. In today's video, we'll dissect these astonishing allegations and reveal the truth about China's stance in this conflict, as well as what China has and has not done. Trust me, the answer will completely shock you, so make sure that you watch until the end, where I'll reveal what China has been doing to Israel for the past 7 years. Just last week, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken flew to Israel to pledge America's undying support for Israel, announcing, "You may be strong enough on your own to defend yourself, but as long as America exists, you will never, ever have to." NATO allies such as Germany instantly fell in line, with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz stating there is only one place for Germany, and that is side by side with Israel. He went even further and announced a ban of all Hamas activities in Germany and outlawed the pro-Palestinian group Samadun. However, the rest of the world is not as pro-Israel as the West, with most of the global South having a very different viewpoint. Interesting enough, these two maps tell a story of how divided and polarized our world truly is. Notice how most of the world didn't support sanctions on Russia, and besides the United States and its core allies, once again, most of the world recognizes Palestine as a sovereign state. As tensions and anxieties run high throughout the world and people take sides, some have even tried to blame China for this conflict. Blaming China for seemingly every problem has of course become a favorite pastime of the West. Here is Fox News' very own China expert, Gordon Chang, who recently tweeted this absurd allegation: "China supports Hamas, China supports butchery." Gordon is a well-known China hawk who has been incorrectly predicting China's collapse for well over 20 years. His insights into China are completely fabricated and extremely easy to debunk. So let's dissect China's official position on the war to help everyone understand what China is really saying. China is deeply concerned over the current escalation of tensions and the violence between Palestine and Israel. We call on relevant parties to remain calm, exercise restraint, and immediately end the hostilities to protect civilians and avoid further deterioration of the situation. The recurrence of the conflict shows once again that the protracted standstill of the peace process cannot go on. The fundamental way out of the conflict lies in implementing the two-state solution and establishing an independent state of Palestine. The international community needs to act with greater urgency, step up input into the Palestine question, facilitate the early resumption of peace talks between Palestine and Israel, and find a way to bring about enduring peace. China will continue to work relentlessly with the international community towards that end. This official statement from China's foreign ministry barely made a blip in Western media, and when it did, they obsessed about China failing to condemn Hamas. However, the truth is that China is walking a very tight rope here because it maintains good relations with both Palestine and Israel. This is also exactly how China responded to the war in Ukraine, because China also has good relations with both Russia and Ukraine. Unlike the United States, who only wants to align themselves with countries who embrace the same political system and ideology, China is interested in strengthening economic ties and trade with all countries, and couldn't care less what political system you have. It's this neutral and non-interventionist approach that is the defining feature of China's foreign policy, and this new war in Israel and Palestine is no exception. Maintaining this impartiality also gives China a clear diplomatic advantage, because this gives it a strong negotiating power with both sides of any conflict, as neither side can simply dismiss China as partial to the other. Due to this unique position China is in, it has been often seen, even by the West, as a potential neutral mediator in recent conflicts throughout the world. Earlier this year, China brokered an unprecedented peace deal in the Middle East between long-term enemies Saudi Arabia and Iran. And it's precisely because of this neutrality that China succeeded in doing so after Western powers has consistently failed. Therefore, China's position on this new war is in fact fully consistent with its past stances. China is not evading the issue or weaseling its way out of doing the right thing and standing with Israel, as the West has accused. Instead, China is committed to staying neutral, and this is completely normal and justifiable given its deep ties with both Israel and Palestine. Now, some critics have called China hypocritical for advocating a two-state solution for Palestine, but not supporting the same solution for Tibet, Xinjiang, or Hong Kong. However, those who make this allegation don't understand China and the simple fact that all of these regions are an inalienable part of China, and not a single country on earth recognizes any of these regions as independent. This is a stark contrast to the situation in Palestine, where once again, most of the world does in fact recognize Palestine as a sovereign state, and even Israel's closest ally, the United States, has been a large proponent of a two-state solution for most of the last half-century. In Gaza, Palestinians live under military occupation. They have no hope for a better future, and the region is often called the world's largest open-air prison. 50% of people living in Gaza are in extreme poverty, with Gaza having the world's highest unemployment rate. Quite frankly, these are the exact breeding grounds for extreme terrorism, and the only way to solve this problem is providing future generations in Gaza the right to freedoms and a chance at a better life. Here is a hot take that you'll never hear from Western media. Israel should have learned from China on how to deal with this problem. China faced terrorism in Xinjiang, but instead of killing innocent Uyghurs, the Chinese government pushed for investment into infrastructure, tourism, cotton, and solar panels to enrich and better the average Uyghur's life. Today, the average Xinjiang Uyghur is almost twice as wealthy as the average Thai and almost 3 times as wealthy as the average Vietnamese citizen. Once again, Israel should have learned from China, but it hasn't, and instead is stuck in this never-ending cycle of violence and hate. Now, what I've said here about Xinjiang might come as a surprise to anyone who believes the Western narrative that China has turned the province into an Orwellian hellhole with slave labor and concentration camps. But stay tuned until next week, because I'm releasing a new video breaking down a shocking new report from 2 German scholars who finally reveal the truth that Western media refuses to tell you about China's Xinjiang province. But for now, let's debunk the myth that China supports Hamas and is to blame for this new war. The essence of these allegations is that because Iran supports Hamas and China has economic ties with Iran, China is therefore directly responsible for the bloodshed. Claims have even surfaced accusing China of secretly plotting with Iran to use Hamas to destroy Israel. Honestly, it feels silly that this needs to be explained, but given the shocking prevalence of these views on Western social media and news outlets, let's break it down. While China does maintain a good economic relationship with Iran, countless other countries do too, including key US allies and partners such as Turkey and the United Arab Emirates, the former of which is even a NATO member. However, allow me to drop a massive truth bomb here that will 100% shatter these latest allegations. While China has certainly helped Iran recover its sluggish economy, its relationship with Iran is not in any way special, unique, or even substantial compared to its ties with other countries in the region. In fact, for the past 7 years, China has actually invested more money into Israel than it has Iran, based on data collected by the ChinaMed Project, one of the most comprehensive research projects that documents and quantifies China's deepening ties in the region. What's more, the data shows that China has actually developed a closer relationship with Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE than it has with Iran in terms of economic, diplomatic, and military cooperation. This, of course, includes oil, of which China imports far more from Saudi Arabia and the UAE than it does from Iran. And what's most striking here is that all 3 of these nations, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, are all close friends and security allies of the United States. Thus, the West accusing China of being too close to Iran and fraternizing with the enemy of the West is completely irrational. What's even more ironic is that critics in the West, especially the United States, have been quick to denounce China's ties with Iran, while at the same time condemning China for not using these exact same ties to pressure Iran into ending its support of Hamas. Let's also not forget that the United States is happy to cut deals with Iran when it suits them. Just last month, it was ready to pay Iran $6 billion as part of a prisoner swap, although it has since withdrawn that promise after the fighting between Israel and Hamas began. In conclusion, the horrific new war in Israel and Palestine has shocked the entire world, and the indiscriminate killing of thousands of civilians, including women and children, is utterly disturbing and inhumane, regardless of which side does it. Cooler heads must prevail right now and bring an immediate end to this needless bloodshed. This is what all nations on Earth need to be calling for. Unfortunately, this conflict shows no signs of dying down and has the potential to trigger a wider conflict that pulls in other nations and even start World War III if it is not de-escalated. Also, it doesn't help that social media is currently overflowing with disinformation, including about China's stance and its own involvement. But as I've shown in today's video, China's position is very clear. It's called for an immediate de-escalation and end to the violence, and asserts that the only way to achieve this is by implementing the two-state solution and establishing an independent state of Palestine. Most importantly, it's also invested heavily in nations all throughout the region, including Israel, and wishes to strengthen its economic and diplomatic cooperation with them while maintaining its signature neutral and non-interventionist stance. As a result, China has absolutely nothing to gain and everything to lose by taking sides or inciting conflict in the Middle East. Overall, as is typical of Western criticism of China, China can't ever do anything right and is condemned if it does and condemned if it doesn't. But if you're really interested in seeing what China's relationship is with the Middle East, make sure that you watch this video, breaking down the Belt and Road Initiative and how China has directly impacted the lives of over 2 billion Muslims in the region. Click here to watch this video now. And everybody, thank you so much for spending time with me here on YouTube. We're going to continue to follow this story, and I can't wait to see you in our next video soon.